So Charlotte is going to be releasing next week on Thursday, I believe, and so with that, you know, it kind of begs the question, you know, do we go for it? Is it worth it? Now that I've got Harper, should we do it? You know, obviously with Charlotte, she is bringing that power. She is bringing the firepower for the dark side now, of course, with the dark element. Now, obviously with where we stand with Harper, I mean, okay, one thing which I do want to mention, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like, you know how like, you know how they're bringing on a lot of females in the game? Yeah. Why are they also making it so that the male characters are like a tier behind the new female characters? What's going on here? Because ultimately with Lim and Beast, I'm not gonna lie, Harper and Charlotte, I mean, clearly they are the more favored choices. I don't like where this is going, devs. Anyway, so obviously with Harper, I mean, again, the way she's coming across, she's a fantastic breaker, especially with all that she provides for the dark team and how much she can actually boost it up. Of course, I'm having an absolute blast time with her, of course, especially with the longevity of the second skill. Again, I was very surprised on like Harper, like her damage output is pretty nice, of course. Again, when it comes to the duping side of things, as I've suggested, I mean, it's more on the same as Go's level in terms of A2 helps out with the complete breakness, which is exactly what you want because she is a breaker, and then A3 again furthermore caters to you allowing to do more damage by your skill 1 being the setup for everything else, to then leaning that into your ultimate doing more damage. So she's working on the same premise as I would say on how you should look at Go, of course. So A3 is kind of like the sweet spot for her, of course, in terms of the duping side of things. Now, as I've said, Harper again fantastic. She's yeah, the way they've kind of introduced both of these kits, very solid. Obviously she does work hand on hand with Charlotte, makes sense, they're twin sisters, and so it kind of begs the question, now is Charlotte worth pulling? I know some people have mentioned that, oh, I'm going to skip Harper and maybe go for Charlotte because I want more firepower. Now I will say that between Charlotte and Beast, Charlotte is having the upper hand. With what I was running with Beast when I was running Harper, Libora and Beast, yeah, it wasn't really much of a drastic change in terms of Beast's damage output, and just doing some raw number calculations, Charlotte is going to hit harder, way harder. Now, a huge thank you to Alpha. So he's dropped a video basically showing us the raw damage of Harper. So this is without any gear, this is kind of Harper and her kit, and so we can kind of get an idea on, you know, what the raw power is looking like of Harper, and I believe in a couple of days time we will get him doing the comparisons between A1, A2, A3 and A4, so looking at the duping side of things. I have my thoughts on where I would actually suggest on kind of duping her out when it comes to with Charlotte, although it's going to be lesser than Harper, so it might release some, or it might alleviate some of the burden of thinking of having to go furthermore with Charlotte, of course, in terms of duping her out, of course. But overall, so obviously average damage 3.4k per shot, ultimate average is around about 200k margin, so yeah, I mean that's not too bad in terms of knowing that there's nothing really more behind Harper in terms of what we can cater to in building her up. So like when it came to me doing some calculations, of course, I opted out on using the stats from my Gogon here, of course, who has 18k because of course he's a defensive build character. That's going to be another thing which is going to be fairly interesting on going about building Charlotte, is that we're building her up in a offensive gear way to then catering to defense stats. It's going to be super weird, but we'll see how it plays out. So obviously you can cater to using the toughness set, solid foundation set, curse set, which I know a lot of people will probably opt out on. I think I will too. And then from that, we'll just have to really make sure that her defense is up. I'm going to try and shoot for the 20k margin when it comes to getting the defense up, since that's what she's going to be scaling off from. And then from that point on, if I can cater to more for the crits, since that's what more support that we can gain. And then of course Libora is going to be giving us that 20%, well, if you have her duped out, 20%, but if you don't, it'll be 10%, plus the 15% on the debuff that she applies onto the enemy. So we can really stack up on a full-on element dark damage in terms of the double support that we're getting, and then also the DPS does provide also support herself, so it really does maximize what we can produce. And obviously with Charlotte and Libora kind of working in that same manner, yeah, so this new look for the dark element is looking pretty strong, heavily needed as I suggested. Right, I'll skip it a little bit so that way you guys can see on what she's looking like with the power of Harper beside her. So with raw stats, we were at 250,000 with Charlotte on her own, and with Harper we basically just jump up to 500,000. So obviously it is a big jump. in terms of what the additional character can provide. But I mean, Harper herself is providing that support play. That's how she... Well, then again, to be fair, Charlotte and Harper just kind of bounce off one another. So like the consistency of damage output between the two girls with how they help each other, and then with that little sneak peek of Lee Bora just kind of, you know, doing her thing with boosting the team. Yeah, I mean, like I said, these two girls, you know, just kind of excluding their appearance, they are going to be producing some good amount of damage. So that's why I say that when it comes to with the characters that we have now, with the characters that are coming up later, you know, it is a pitiful, yeah, it's a difficult point to be at, because as much as, you know, people aren't a fan of these girls, with going off from their kits, you know, they are doing wonders for the Dark Element. They truly are. And obviously with the release of Charlotte, I will say it should make life a whole lot easier going against Kaiser. That's one thing which I'm really hoping for, of course. But yeah, they are working extremely well back to back with one another. Again, good amount of damage to be dished out once we fully more cater to our own sets, catering on giving them high main stats, being the defense, as well as supporting furthermore on the crit side of things. And then having that with Harper, then the damage output is going to go up by, I would say, a quadruple amount. Maybe triple, quadruple amount. I truly do believe that's going to be the end result, because with where Harper is at right now, if we cater to, because I mean right now she's doing like 5k percentage on her ultimate, 4k on her second skill, and if I gave her my Gogun He stat, then raw damage I'm doing what, 750k on the second skill, and then just over 1 million on the ultimate, and that's not me taking into consideration on the gear sets that I'm running or the buffs that I can possibly, or that I will be getting through Harper and Lee Bora, and that's also me excluding the dupe passives from Charlotte, of course. So yeah, Charlotte is coming in to deal damage, I will say that. Another thing to mention is that with the way these two girls are working, they do have longevity given to them. Because, I mean, Harper herself, I mean, again, she's going off from max HP, she can get some shield going on, so obviously she can tank a few hits. Same with Charlotte, high defense, being able to get 20%, being able to get shield, that is 20% from her defense, as long as the dash is active, of course. Again, there's longevity given between the two girls, of course, so the fact that they can dish out a disgusting amount of damage, work well with one another, whilst being able to tank, I mean, that alone just sets you up with how the Dark Element is truly looking now, in terms of the setup being the two twins and then Lee Bora. That's effectively going to be the team, of course. But anyway, going furthermore into Charlotte's passives, of course. So I'm just gonna say this right now. A3 for Harper is where you get the biggest change in terms of her kit just kind of being upgraded, of course. Once you go furthermore into it, A4, A5, again, it gets more better. But the biggest change in my eyes is A3. Charlotte, on the other hand, I'm gonna give it to A1. When the user uses tier 3 basic attack one time, take this becomes available. Cooldown 20 seconds. If you don't take this, is the ultimate, by the way. So yeah. When the user uses as a dance, it increases dark damage by 15% for 20 seconds. So again, this is what I mean about how Charlotte, you know, not only can she dish out the damage, not only is she making it so that the ultimate is going to be accessible. Again, the ultimate damage can really build up to do a ton of damage, of course. But again, having Harper and then having that A1 available, having Harper with all her dupes being applied, again, if you get it to A3, and then having Charlotte ready for A1, of course, that would just pile on with that ultimate, just doing a disgusting amount of damage. And the fact that it'll be at the ready once you get that tier 3 basic attack one time being available, that is a high damage at a more consistent rate or more quick rate. You gotta love that. So that's what I would say, that if you can at least minimum get her to A1, then I think that is going to be the sweet spot for Charlotte, of course. Furthermore, catering, of course, you get the defense increases per usual. The ultimate does change up, so it becomes Harper We Are One, so where Harper helps and increases the user's damage by 70%. So it's kind of like in the same way of Harper's A3. Basic attack becomes more faster, and you get damage go for 60%, which makes sense since that's what she's kind of working off from. And then the A5, basically, when using your basic attack, you get Dole Gratitude, which increases the damage of Harper We Are One, which is the second skill, as well as Harper Help. So no, Harper 1 is the ultimate, and then Harper Help is the second skill by 8%, and you can stack it up to 15 times. So obviously, furthermore, catering into her kit itself, it just kind of elevates her damage output through her ultimate, her base attack, and the final one again helps out the damage output on the ultimate as well as skill 2 now. But I would say that if you can at the very least get the A1 going, that will put you in that sweet spot to have the ultimate disposal at a more high rate, of course. And obviously you can't go wrong by having that increase in dark damage, since that's what we're trying to cater to on fully more catering to the whole team, of course. Again, you got to remember Harper herself can also dish damage, and also you can't forget about Libora. Libora is an underdog when it comes to supporting and doing some good amount of damage too. So, and that is why I mentioned that obviously with Charlotte it might be less of a burden, because obviously I think A1 is probably going to be a nice little chill spot to kind of get her at, unless you want to really cater to going and keeping up with the ultimate change. If you want to maximize that, then again you can go for doing that. But I truly do believe that A1 is kind of like the biggest passive out of all of them to kind of really consider getting, yeah, throughout all the other A1 to A5.